Notre Dame was good last year offensively. No way around it. Riley Leonard ran the football well. Jeremiah Love was electrifying. But in 2025, my prediction for Notre Dame is they will have a 1,000-yard wide receiver for the first time since 2019. How about that for the Irish, man? And if you're an Irish fan, you say, hallelujah. That's why we brought Mike Denbrock here, man. We saw what he did with Jaden Daniels and Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors. We wanted a piece of that action now. There's a lot of suspects here for Notre Dame to get this done in that wide receiver room. Malachi Fields transferring in from Virginia. And don't look now, he had 2 800-yard years for the Cavs. Will Pauling from Wisconsin, his best year at Wisconsin, he had 800-plus receiving yards as well. Jaden Greathouse, I don't think you have to squint too hard to see what he could be in the biggest games for you. Against Penn State and Ohio State, he had his best games, over 100 yards. Like he averaged almost 15 yards a catch last year. Jordan Faison in the slot, does he feast a little bit underneath? Okay, is he a guy that C.J. Carr relies on early on? Cato made a great point getting into it. Is he someone that helps C.J. Carr sort of acclimate to college football as a starter, if he is in fact your starter? I think those are all usual questions to ask in terms of who could be the guy, but I think there's also a lot of suspects to get that done, in my humble opinion. So speaking to Notre Dame, I think the question you would ask following up to that is, well, there's a lot of good receivers, JD. Awesome. We feel good about our passing game. Also a good thing. But, is there going to be enough targets to go around? Is there enough food on the table to feed all these mouths? My opinion is with Mike Denbrock and how he actually wants to call your offense, I don't think you've seen it just yet. And that's not knocking the personnel at Notre Dame. It's just speaking to how Mike Denbrock typically wants to operate his offense in a perfect world relative to what you've had. Every single year at LSU, Mike Denbrock's offense averaged 30 pass attempts a game. That wasn't by accident. You say, JD, well, they had good receivers. Yeah, but so do you this year. I don't know if you have Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas running around out there, but you could. You could have a guy that goes over 1,000 yards. Again, that's my prediction. The last couple of years in Notre Dame, they have failed to throw the ball over 28 times a game. Okay, so they're not yet, I don't think, at the level of trying to push the ball downfield just yet. I think some of that has been personnel. Now I think you have the personnel to do it. So not just the personnel on the perimeter. I think you got a quarterback to get it done. Because if you watch the spring game, if you watch Notre Dame on Peacock do their spring scrimmage, you saw C.J. Carr throw the ball, and you noticed there was a different level to the way that he pushed the ball past the 10 to 15-yard range. He was making throws and putting it in spots with touch where you say, okay, Riley Leonard did that on the slot fade a few times, but for the most part, it was a little bit few and far between as to when we were actually striking the fear into a secondary. C.J. Carr has that. Now, we saw it in small doses in the spring game, but if that's a preview to the movie, you got your guy. And I don't think it's an accident that Steve Angeli, post-spring game, said, okay, you know what, I'm going to hit the portal. Because I think Marcus Freeman had an honest conversation with him that, hey, right now, C.J. Carr, if he's not our guy, he's pushing you to be the guy. And that was, I think, all he needed to hear. Now he's going to go ball at Syracuse, and I think everyone in South Bend wishes him well. But I think C.J. Carr pushing Steve Angeli to the portal says everything you need to know about the kind of quarterback he's going to be for you here in 2025. Now, in the vein of this prediction, it's pretty fair to take into account your opponents, right? I don't think we're breaking news there. If we're just going to be adults about this, who's the best secondary that Notre Dame's going to play? Probably A&M from a caliber of player standpoint, right? Notre Dame fans, correct me if I'm wrong, I went up and down your schedule. I did not see a defense that from a talent level made me nervous in the secondary, plus had a yards per game through the air allowed last year that was higher than 70 in all of college football. So you're not playing a bunch of world beaters. Now, USC, good secondary. Again, A&M, good secondary. NC State could be a good secondary with Dave Doran in that group. They're always feisty. But again, is there anybody where you just roll the ball out there on Saturday and say, you know what, I think they got us from a Jimmy's and Joe's perspective? I don't think so. Good battles, but if the number is 1,000 yards for one of those guys, I think you're going to have a chance to get that done here in 2025. So what does it mean big picture? Cool, have a 1,000-yard receiver. Awesome. First guy since Chase Claypool. That's a good vibe for us in South Bend. Helps us market ourselves to receivers and at the high school level. All that's good. Hear that. What it means, though, is Notre Dame probably verifies them as a college football playoff team because you got Jeremiah Love running the rock. The defense is going to be awesome yet again under Marcus Freeman. Chris Ash now managing that whole side of the football. Great. So we're probably still a playoff team. But I think the excitement starts with, well, when we get to the playoff, when you play Notre Dame in round 1 or wherever you end up playing them, you have to deal with a new element of that offense. There is a gear this offense now has with Mike Denbrock now having, full controls of this whole thing with how he can call this thing downfield, with more in that receiver room, with a quarterback to push it downfield, all of that. There's a different gear that you have to deal with that you didn't have to deal with last year. Like we said it many times, Mike Denbrock had to access the secret menu of this Notre Dame offense to have something vertical in the passing game. Meaning it wasn't really the bread and butter. You had to have a couple of plays here. Like against Georgia, they accessed this in short yardage. You saw it against Indiana. It wasn't the go-to of we're going to call 4 verts or we're going to call something that makes your safeties worried about where their footing is before the snap. It wasn't something you worried about. Now, what you did worry about was punch you in the mouth, tackling Jeremiah Love, worried about what the defense was, all that. You worried about that, but you didn't worry about Notre Dame potentially hanging 300 on you through the air. I think you have to worry about that now in 2025. And I think you have to worry about a 1,000-yard receiver that the Irish are going to have. If I had to call my shot right now, I'd probably say Jaden Greathouse. I think the way that he snapped against Ohio State, the best secondary in college football last year, should be grounds to make you feel like he could be your guy. So we'll call our shot even more specifically Jaden Greathouse, your 1,000-yard receiver. But anyway you slice it, I think someone gets it done. I think the offense will be more open. You got a quarterback to do it. You got players to get it done on the outside. And overall, that'll lead to Notre Dame being a real force here in the college football playoff, giving you something else to worry about when you play the Irish in the postseason and also during the regular season. So there you have it.